The following program has been rated GE by the Kenya Film Classification Board. It is therefore suitable for general family viewing.
Hello viewer, welcome to Chungu cha Jamii. I'm your host Eunice Mugo. Today on the show we're talking about rite of passage. What is rite of passage to you? Do you have a son, a nephew who is going through rite of passage or who has gone through rite of passage? What is your perspective when you hear about rite of passage? What is your take on the same? Send in your question, your comments across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. I'm not alone. Together with me are gentlemen who are going to help us to understand better about this rite of passage. I will allow them to introduce themselves. Welcome, guests. Starting with you.
I'm Reverend FM Githinji Kanake. I'm from the Presbyterian system of East Africa system. I fellowship at St. Andrews. And I've been doing this for the last, I've been moved in that process for the last 10 years. And I've kind of given room to the young men that we have trained, and they are looking at, they're not young people, but they are taking care of the situation. And I think we'll listen into the rite of passage in terms of its development over the last 20 years. Yeah, from the church perspective.
Interesting. Thank you so much, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And to you, sir.
Thank you, Eunice. My name is Benjamin, and I'm a mind education specialist. And most of the time, I deal with the world of the heart, issues of the world of the heart.
Welcome on the show, Mr. Benjamin. To start with, today we are talking about rite of passage. Glad that you're having you as our guest today, because rite of passage is between the both boys and girls, but most of the time when you hear about rite of passage, we only think of the boy child because of circumcision, which is also there in the Bible. What is rite of passage? And like I've just said, is it only reflecting to the boy child in the sense of circumcision, or what is rite of passage, and is it also applicable to the girl child?
Yeah, I would like to say that in simple definition that gets us to understand what is rite of passage. ROP. It is what we call a milestone in any growing person to the next level. It is not about just circumcision. It is circumcision for the boys, but the milestone transformation to the next level in life for boys and girls together.
When you talk about milestone to the next level for both boys and girls, at least with the boys, you've said is not only for circumcision. In our country today, for the girl, it's against the Kenyan law for a girl to go through circumcision, that's FGM. But it is legal for a boy to go through circumcision. Now, my question is, if this is the rite of passage of a milestone, from one milestone to another, if for a boy is circumcision, what is it for a girl?
It is very clear that the issue here is about my neighbor's area of speciality. Transforming their mind to prepare themselves for the next level in life. They have been in the primary school with their mothers and fathers and other brothers and other relatives. But now they may have to go to a school where they will be far away from home, or even if they are not going there, at their age of 14 years, they are going to transform into an area whereby they will be expected to take responsibility of their doing homeworks, of looking at their own lives, where my facilities for going to school and all that. You will not be spoon feeding that person. Now the training on also the values of life as now they move on to the next level is the most important. So the girl child has to go through a value transformational training. We are talking about the mindset at that time of 14 years, when all of them are growing. The boy is growing to have a changed voice. The girl child also starts experiencing the menstruations and all that. So they are also going into another life. How do they remain responsible, pure, young people who can be expected to carry on their lives in the future?
Wow, interesting. Coming to you, Mr. Benjamin, like what Mr. has just told us about evolving from one level of stage to another. From a mind education perspective, when you're talking about rite of passage, what is it that you're looking at when you're talking or guiding the boy, the young boy or the young girl?
For me, I would say the rite of passage is not all about circumcision.
Sure.
Because when we talk about circumcision, it varies from a different community to another, and also from different cultures according to the traditions. Some of the traditions, normally they circumcise their boys when they are like even some months, some years, not because there is any condition or any sort of a disease that is making them to do that, but simply because to them this is not a big deal. To some other communities, they term it to be like, now you're transiting from, it's a transition in short, from where you have been and the kind of childish mentality that you have been having. Now you're given another, you're going to another level. Just as Rev has said, you know, most of the time people think about this in the way of now nurturing their heart and giving them a different mindset. So for me, when I talk about mindset, I'm talking about change. And, you know, for everything that we do, whether you're creating a book, whether you, for example, the one who was making this table, the one who was making this chair, they all went to a point that they had to do a drawing. And this drawing is what we call blueprint. So mind education, it's all about the blueprint of the heart. Because the heart is a world that is unseen. So when we talk about the rite of passage in change of mindset, we have to think about what is it that they have to change and where are they transiting from. Because most of the time, even when you look in the Bible, when we refer to the Bible, a person like Abraham, he was able to circumcise. And then also God told him that he has to circumcise every male child. Some of them were very young. But initially, maybe I'll talk about that later. When we talk about the circumcision that was there between God and Abraham, was not circumcision to do with the way for us people we take it to be a circumcision. It was like a seal of the promise that they had done together. It was like giving a seal of the promise.
Just maybe to ask you as you elaborate on that, when you say it was a seal of the promise between Abraham and God to do the circumcision, then does it mean during that time it was not a rite of passage?
For me, I wouldn't say that it was a rite of passage because some of the people were circumcised when they were very young.
8 days.
8 days. So if you talk about rite of passage, you will tell me 8 days. What is rite of passage there? Changing of what mind to what mind?
So correct me here. So even those who practice doing, because you have some religions and some individuals who look at it from that perspective of sealing the covenant between Abraham and God. There's some who pick it up from there, and some do it to children, as you said, 8 days, as early at that time. Because in the African perspective, we perceive circumcision as a rite of passage from a young boy to a young man. So is it true if I, per se, take it from that perspective and do it to my son who is 8 days old? Is it? Can I just say it's a sealing the covenant like Abraham did, and not a rite of passage?
One thing that I would say, now people read the Bible, but people don't read the Bible with a heart to understand the concept. People only read the Bible because it is written, and then they start practicing for their own personal benefits. One, I would want to appreciate some of the cultures who do it at a time that they have to change the mindset and the mentality of these boys.
Sure.
Why? Because they teach them how now to change their mind from that childish behavior. Now they start thinking differently. Just as Rev said, you're preparing them because now they're going to high school. When they go to high school, they have no one to take care of them. So it's like sort of you're pushing them to difficulties so that they may have a stronger heart. They are used to having a very weak heart, that everything is done by their parents, everything is done by them house managers, everything is done by their sisters. But now you're pushing them to an extent that now they have to understand. I want to say this. I don't want to say that I don't want people to hide themselves in the belief of it is biblical that this is a rite of passage. Because even if somebody was supposed to be circumcised in an age of 8 days, 8 months, then what rite of passage is that?
But you've just said it's not rite of passage, it's only sealing the covenant. Meaning, when you say like that, correct me if I'm wrong, if I do it to my son at the age of 8 days or 8 months, as we are talking about it right now, then that is just right of it in terms of circumcision only. With the mind back in my head, he will not feel as much pain as he will when he's much aware of what is happening around him.
But for me,
But at that time when it comes, I'll also tell me if there is an age limit on that, because if there is an age limit, then at that age, then I'll just take him to the classes.
For me, I would say like this.
Hold on to that thought. Coming to you.
Yes,
as you give us your pointers on that, also let me know if there is an age bracket when you are talking about rite of passage.
Perhaps I would like to maybe expound on one or two things in terms of also why. Why rite of passage?
Sure.
My neighbor has clearly identified the Abrahamic covenant with God. That is Genesis 11:17, where God gave a covenant from today to Abraham that everybody in your household must be circumcised at the age of 8 days. And the reason was very simple that time: identity. That the children of Israel will be different from the Canaanites, where they were living. So there are those two reasons, for mindset and identity as a people who are not like the others. Maybe God in his wisdom had the theology of talking about whether the HIV question or coming. There was no HIV that time. That the people who have gone through that process can actually miss out on AIDS just by the fact that they are that, and they will go to the bathrooms and clean themselves. They may not be left with the staffs around there. They will be cleaned. And the issue on rite of passage for our boys the Christian boys from our church as a community. We have been hiring experts who have been trained at Kenyatta Hospital. They have been doing the rite of passage to the non-practicing communities because of HIV/AIDS, where the standards, the parameters set were from WHO in terms of the practice and procedure of that circumcision process. So you can see, you can even put another parameter. Now HIV/AIDS, other than identity, and then the Christian positioning of God's people. Ours as Christians is a question of not just identity, but the question of Abrahamic covenant with God. And we realize that Africa has so many communities who agreed in very many years. Like now the Bantus came from Congo Forest all the way to South Africa and then came up to Mount Kenya. Then they came down and they came through now Embu to wherever they are. The Luyas are there, other communities are there, but they have neighbors who don't do it. So it is a question of you looking at those groups and those communities that have been doing it, why they did it. Majority of them was a question of this transformation from childhood to the next level of taking responsibility in their lives. Even when they were not going to school, they were doing it. You remember that? So that's a very important factor. That if he does it, it is done to him at 8 days. I know some mothers have said they cannot have their children doing it at age 14. They will suffer from pain because they love the boys. They don't want them to suffer. So those are issues that, but really, you will not even, identity will be an issue. But now, his maturity, the parameter requirement for you to get to the next stage is to be ready mentally. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Because I think that is the main thing. Yes. But for Abraham's case, identity, because they were living amongst people who did not practice that.
So does that mean that maturity comes with age?
Yes. Up to 26.
Yes, of course.
Because when you are mature.
Yes, of course.
Okay. I understand from my director is telling me that you're running out of time. So as you wind up, because after the break we're coming in with the female perspective of this rite of passage, I'd want you to give your parting shots from the male perspective as you wind up the show, starting with you, Mr. Kamaki.
For now, we are going to have another shot for the girls. I would like to say that the Christian practice now is to engage the traditions and the traditionalists and the Christianity leadership to engage and agree that we really don't want to say this is just a traditional requirement for one group or the other. We want to say it's a good Christian practice also. So that inculcation allows Christian practice to engage with the traditionalists for the purposes of both preparing the children for the future and also bringing them to board the requirement of the scientific world and the challenges of disease and all that kind of thing. Just as we wind up, I would like to say the young boy is 14 years. He is not like the man who was getting, going through the rite of passage at 21. That was 70 and below. Most of us could not go through the rite of passage before, because you must be mature. So this time they need to be trained from a Christian perspective and also the traditional perspective. But the traditional perspective is the one that has a lot of questions on the values. Yes. And that one we may have to touch maybe when we come back, and we'll look at it from the perspective of why does the boy child have to be given some of these questions being asked now? Do they have to go back to the question of being advised that they must practice those things their great-grandfathers did or are trained to do and were guided, in terms of now their marriages and what have we? They need to have another session for marriage, not this one of going over from 14 to go to high school and college.
Mr. Benjamin.
One, I would want to say that the term circumcision and rite of passage, we need to separate these two things. And the true circumcision is not a circumcision as people think. Biblically, I want to say that it is the circumcision of the heart, which in the Bible, God says they have to circumcise their heart, which means their originality must come to, it's like now transiting from the originality of where I came from to a new world. How? When we talk about that, we are talking about the world of sin to the world of salvation. This is the circumcision of the heart. The former things, the old things, to the new life. Because the people who are in Christ, they have become new creation. They have become new creatures. The old is past, everything becomes new. It's the same way with now the rite of passage, as Rev is speaking about. They change their mentality from the old way of thinking to the new way of thinking. That's my part.
Wow, very interesting. Viewer, I hope you're learning.
Could I add something?
Okay, sure, you can
I wanted to just confirm what he has said, that in the Acts of the Apostles, there was a big battle between the apostles on whether you should be circumcised for you to become a Christian or not.
Yes.
And Paul and Barnabas fought that war, and finally the council met and they agreed that the circumcision is physical, but salvation is the heart. That's very true, and that is why we have agreed. We need to bring together Christians and
non-Christian
and traditionalists, not traditionalists, and accept that we need the rite of passage, not circumcision alone.
Yes.
Yes.
True.
They must go together.
Sure.
They will not go separate.
Very true.
Yes.
Viewer, I hope you're learning as much as I am. And as we are talking about rite of passage and circumcision, like as the gentlemen have just said, that you need to separate the two, understand what is circumcision and also what is rite of passage. Send in your question, your comments across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. When we come back after the break, we'll take the same rite of passage brought, but from the female perspective. How do a girl child go through rite of passage? A girl child is not supposed to go through circumcision, but what is the rite of passage to a girl child? What is being taught? What is being passed on to a girl child? Send in your question, your comments, your concern across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. We'll be back shortly.